swerve, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, swerve, burp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, burp, swerve, shake,
there we go.
Dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, swerve, earthquake.
What can I say? I like to let the song finish live after the fact, whatever. Fade outs. Fade outs are for the birds, man. Birds that fade out. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Kelly Olynyk Hour here. I should have done that in a different voice. That was a missed opportunity for me to channel, like a little inner soft NPR. I guess it doesn't have to be NPR, some other radio station. Well, welcome to the Kelly Olynyk Hour here on Fantasy NBA Today. We're going to be talking about Kelly Olynyk and I don't know, maybe some other stuff too. Doesn't matter. We don't need to talk about anything else because all we need to talk about is Kelly Olynyk. Yeah, so anyway, welcome to the Kelly Olynyk Hour. I'm Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. This is a Sports Ethos presentation. Check out the Sports Ethos Baseball Draft Guide, available in the MLB Fantasy Pass for just $6 a month. Or, and this is the deal of the millennium, if you have an NBA subscription already at Sports Ethos, you can upgrade, I say, to the All Sport for echad. There we go. Went a little deeper on this one. $1 you can upgrade to the All Sport. It's an awesome way to get your day going. So, look, don't worry. We'll get to Kelly Olynyk. Their game was sort of in the middle of the card yesterday. But that's, of course, what we're doing on this one. This is a two-show Wednesday again. We're going to break down yesterday's results, give you some ads, drops, all that good stuff on this episode. Later on today, in fact, depending on how time shakes out, I might try to do them back-to-back. If not back-to-back, it'll be early in the afternoon, like right after my lunch. We'll do our schedule analysis show, which is going to be a little bit shorter today because there's not a lot that you want to be looking at, but we got a few key things. I put them out on social already at Dan Besservis. If you guys want to check that out and have kind of like a little bit of a prelude to it, I would suggest you do it. That way you have it kind of written out, but we'll do that on the second show today. For now, however, let's start talking about the card because that's frankly the important stuff. Orlando took care of business against Charlotte. This game was not as close as the final score would indicate, and you can kind of see that from the minute distributions on the Orlando side. Orlando is all schedule streams at this point, with the exception basically of Franz Wagner, which is fine because they actually had a good schedule starting yesterday. But from a full season, like rest of season standpoint, you're not picking up any of these guys for rest of season. It's Paolo if you're in a points league, Franz if you're in an anything league, and then a whole lot of Charlotte, on the other hand, we have some stuff that kind of pivots back and forth. Cody Martin has been out for a couple of ball games, so Vasilija Micic got another start and a nice performance, 21-5-4 with a couple of steals and a 3-ball. I do wonder if this is the beginning of a more permanent pivot for the Hornets into Micic the rest of the way. I have no proof that that's what's about to happen because it's not like Cody Martin is a super old guy, but I don't know. I feel like maybe at least with Micic, they're still trying to figure out what they have. The issue, of course, now is for those that are dealing with a schedule situation, Charlotte doesn't play today or tomorrow. So we're not going to get any data on this for another couple of days. They play 8th and the 9th back-to-back, which is good, Friday, Saturday. But we won't know more about whether or not Cody Martin's coming back. We won't know more about what the actual plan is there. On the and again, I'm trying to keep this show geared a bit more towards those that are not concerned about their schedule. That's going to be the second half of our two-parter today. So if you're not worried about your schedule, I do think he deserves kind of a speculative ad where you can just sit on him for 2 days where nothing has to happen necessarily. And then, if it goes great. If Martin comes back and destroys whatever Micic was doing, okay, fine. We move on at that point because he was playing 15, 16, 20 minutes in the games before Cody went down. This has been very much a one-to-one. Micic is the injury replacement for Cody Martin. But this is the kind of year where a guy goes down for injury and then just doesn't come back. Again, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but I do think we need to be at least somewhat cognizant of the possibility that it could happen. Anyway, I do think he deserves a speculative ad. Trey Mann had a better ball game. He's been kind of bad lately, but this is basically what I warned you guys about. Everybody got way out over their skis on Trey Mann after he got traded and had a bunch of games where he was like rebounding and assisting and stealing and scoring. They looked like this game, frankly. 7 out of 9 shooting, obviously tilting the numbers for him, but he's come back to earth, which has been generally now just outside the top 100. And that's fine. He's startable. He's a hold. You're not going to drop him because he's got a really good thing going here, and I don't think we see LaMelo Ball. But that's why I called him a sell high. If you guys were wondering, the aggregate. Davis Bertans is kind of like a weird little three-point streamer right now. I don't think I'm taking that plunge, but anything's possible in these day and age. Grant Williams, 33 minutes off the bench, but Nick Richards is back and played the center spot. I think I'm very much into Grant Williams if he gets like a lot of center minutes, but if it's only a few, I'm not into it. Nick Richards, we saw the good games, we've seen the bad games. He levels off as kind of a little bit in that sort of doesn't matter group we've talked about. The guys that sit like between 100 and 150 and don't really matter. Like you can start him or you don't start him. Meh. Anywho, that's Charlotte. So we finally got through our first game of the day. Boston blew a big lead in Cleveland. 'Tis the week for blown leads across the NBA. No notes on Boston. They're the same every day. Sometimes they just sort of take their eyes off the prize. Cleveland is a more interesting scenario because they lost Evan Mobley in this game as well to a turned ankle. Apparently, he left the arena on crutches. That was the report that surfaced last night after the ball game. Not a great sign for a team that's already down Donovan Mitchell. And so they're back down 2 main guys. Last time it was Garland and Mobley. Now it's Mitchell and Mobley. Karis LeVert did come back. And now we have this new profile. So we know Donovan Mitchell is going to miss a couple of ball games still. We can, I think, safely assume that Mobley's going to miss a couple of ball games if he had to leave the arena on crutches. What does that mean for the guys that are left? Well, first things first, Dean Wade went nuts in the fourth quarter yesterday. He had a perfect fourth, ended up with 23 points, 8 boards, and 6 3-pointers. That ain't going to happen again in the next ball game. Does he start the next game? I'd say there's actually a pretty good probability that Wade starts, but typically he doesn't get that kind of usage, even with a bunch of guys out. If you need 3-pointers and a couple of rebounds, you could stream Dean Wade. I'm not. That doesn't mean you can't. Again, like you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. I'm just not. Jared Allen obviously is a go. Darius Garland is obviously a go. Max Strus dealing with a knee strain. We don't know how severe that is. He's another one that's like, well, could he pop back up in the next ball game? Sam Merrill started for Strus, and we know Merrill can get wild from 3-point land. So that's, again, where one kind of hangs in the balance a little bit. I think if we find out that Strus is still out, you pick up and you start Merrill. And the Cavs actually just started a 5-7 run yesterday, 5 games in 7 nights. So they play again tonight. They play on Friday, Sunday, and Monday. They'll have a lot of games coming up over a short period of time. So we're going to get opportunities here for individual daily streams. We just don't have a report on Strus yet for today, though we don't know. It might be coming soon. If Strus is out, you play Merrill tonight. And again, we're talking about more so on the not using up a head-to-head roster move kind of thing. This is, again, we'll talk about that on the second show. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're talking right now about things you're doing basically against a Roto Games cap or if weekly moves are not a factor for you. So Merrill's a go, in my opinion, if Strus is out. Okoro is a go regardless. There are enough guys out where he can do now enough to be fantasy relevant. And his game is fairly well-rounded when he actually gets a little bit of usage. Karis LeVert, also a go with no Mobley and Mitchell. It's just too much usage that's been thrown back into the main pond where even with these, LeVert in particular has some severe efficiency issues, but I think he can overcome that with volume. So just to recap, Garland, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, I think those guys are goes regardless of Max Strus's status. Dean Wade is 3-pointers stream So you got to be like category hunting a little bit there. And then Merrill is a go, in my opinion, if Strus is out. So that's the Cavs breakdown. Hey, before we get to Detroit, Miami, this thing seems to have hit some sort of Twitter algorithm today. I don't know what I did differently, but I'll try to do it again. If you're watching out on social and this is sort of new and fun for you and you stumbled upon me, hi, first of all, please take a second to like the post that brought you here. And please take a minute to follow at Dan Besbris, DANBESBRIS. We grow when you guys can tell people that we exist. So thank you for whatever you can do in advance. I really do appreciate that. Let's keep chugging. Detroit was able to kind of hang in there with Miami for a while. Simone Fontecchio had 22 points, and he's been on a little bit of a mini run here. Ultimately, and you know, you guys know your teams better than I do, but Fontecchio's fantasy game generally tends to be a little bit limited. He'll get you a steal every now and again. His steals have been okay. And he'll hit you some threes with some okay free throw percent. But he doesn't rebound much. He doesn't pass all that much. He's actually a slightly underrated passer, but in his role that he's got in Detroit, he's not going to be asked to pass all that much. So mostly it's threes, some points, and free throw percent with like a smattering of steals. Now, if you just go over the last 2 weeks, he's been right on the cusp of startable, like around number 110, 15 points on 3 3-pointers. It does kind of feel like he's running warm right now. If you wanted to try it, I would not yell at you. I'm probably not going to stream Fontecchio against a games cap. I don't have the confidence in it. They're down Quentin Grimes right now in Detroit, so he's another guy that could take some of those minutes when he comes back. So, you know, short term, do you need some threes? Like at this point, I would prefer to go with the Cavaliers 3-point shooters because it just feels like they're going to bomb away from out there. Fontecchio, maybe you have a little more upside in free throws or steals, but just in overall minutes, like Merrill, if Strus is out, who we just talked about, or Wade with Mobley out, those guys are going to play minutes, and they profile somewhat similarly, just less willing to chuck. I'm not into Isaiah Stewart. I don't like his 9-cat game. So Detroit for me is Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Thompson, and that's basically it. And for those that are watching for the first time, Jaden Ivey is more of a points league guy, and that's why I left him out. For the Miami Heat, Tyler Hero continues to be out. Duncan Robinson is your 1-to-1 fill-in there, and then you really don't have to worry about anything else because Caleb Martin has a hot game every now and again, but it's not someone you can start every single day right now. So it's Butler, Robinson, Bam, and Rozier. That's it. That's all you got to worry about on Miami. Easy. The Atlanta Hawks, down 1 starter, took care of the Knicks, who are down like 4 right now. And got good numbers from all of the guys. And so no valuation changes on Atlanta. Clint Capella's minutes continue to slowly tick up as he works his minutes cap up into the high 20s. So you basically have 6 guys on the Hawks that you can start every day right now. Jalen Johnson, DeJounte Murray, Sadiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella. Easy. The Knicks, a little bit less easy. Still relatively easy, honestly. Precious Achiuwa's minutes were down yesterday, and it wasn't like it was foul trouble. It was, again, Tom Thibodeau realizing he needed to get some more offense on the floor. So you've seen an uptick in minutes for Bojan Bogdanovic lately. That's been pretty well tied into Jalen Brunson being out. So, yes, we'll get to Deuce McBride in just a second. Bojan is playing more right now because the Knicks can't afford to go offenseless. Like, look at the lineup that they're running out there without Bogdanovic. Precious Achiuwa, no real offense. Josh Hart, minimal offense. Deuce McBride, not much offense. Dante DiVincenzo has turned himself into an offensive hero, but, I mean, look at this game. 24 shots. The efficiency's starting to level off there. There's no offense. So they've had to lean into Bogdanovic. The report, by the way, on Jalen Brunson, just to kind of circle back to that one, was somehow pretty good, which is amazing. I'm like, it looked like the way he went down, it looked like there was no contact. I guess maybe there was some slight knee to knee, but he's being listed as having a sore knee, and that's the win of the century. That's the win of the century. I mean, it's mind-boggling, honestly, that anyway. So assuming Brunson is back in the not too distant future, we're obviously very hopeful of that. I would think at that point, Bojan Bogdanovic goes back to much more of a fringy role. So I'm not picking him up here. He needs a lot of shots and a lot of playing time every night to be a thing. And with Brunson, no timetable, you can't take a chance on that. By the way, quick shout out to the chat room for pointing out that Cody Martin was ruled out for more than a week already. So if you want to take the plunge on Micic in most formats, I think that's good enough to say, yeah, he'll probably have, a handful of games here. Charlotte starts an excellent schedule on Friday. So head-to-head side, you probably try to make that move on Friday. Roto, you could do it now, and that at least gives you a window to kind of see what this becomes. But they go 6 games in 9 nights starting on Friday, if you're into that sort of thing. What we were talking about with New York, Deuce McBride played 45 and a half minutes, basically for the second ball game in a row. He's played mid-40s in minutes. This is a regulation ball game. Provided his limbs don't fall off, you stream McBride with Brunson out. Hart's a go. DiVincenzo's a go. Precious is still a go. I'm not into Jericho Sims, as I just mentioned. I'm not into Bojan Bogdanovic, even in the short term. And then Isaiah Hartenstein is one of the hardest calls to make in fantasy right now, largely because we just don't know when his minutes cap might shift. And he's stuck between 20 and 24 minutes a game right now while he's dealing with his Achilles soreness. That's not enough. We need him at 25, 26 or higher to start him. He's a top 100 guy in that number. We saw when he was playing in the low 30s in minutes, mid 30s in minutes, he was top 30, top 40 range. So the problem, of course, here is that when you have a player with that ridiculous level of upside, 3rd, 4th round pick kind of stuff, you can't just throw him back into the pond. But we have this indefinite situation. So head-to-head, I think you just got to play him and hope you get something. Roto, you stick him on your bench and wait for some sort of good news to come out. The Philadelphia 76ers went into even higher, like DEFCON 1 of zombie mode now. Tyrese Maxey is in concussion protocol, so they're down their 2 most important players. Joel Embiid still without a true timetable on his return. But when one player goes down, a door closes, a window opens, and all of that stuff. There are plenty of streamables in Philadelphia now that maybe weren't there a couple of weeks ago. Let's do what we've been doing with some of the other teams and just try to blitz through this one by one. Campaign got the start for Maxey. He played through an illness and had an okay line. Campaign is not a great 9-category fantasy player. Hasn't been ever. Even when he got some fill-in opportunities last year in Phoenix, he'd have one big game and then he'd have some horrible shooting nights, and he leveled off outside, believe it or not, the top 100. If Payne continues to start, and if his minutes tick up into the high 20s, you play him in points leagues. Buddy Hield is a go. Kelly Oubre is obviously a go. He took 20 shots yesterday. Tobias Harris, obviously a go. I would stay off of the centers. Now, they didn't have to go big in this ball game. Bamba played 12 minutes. Paul Reed played 19 because Brooklyn is not a particularly large basketball team from just a standard size standpoint. They're a long team. The Nets are. And yeah, Paul Reed had 2 pretty good games coming off the bench, but with the minutes not secure, I think I'd rather treat Reed and Bamba as schedule plays. And you may have noticed the 2 players that I haven't talked about yet. Nick Batum, too old, even for me. And Kyle Lowry, who had been on my too old board, which is saying a lot because you guys know me and my love of old players. Kyle Lowry is a start now. Because not just because he's playing 30-something minutes, because he played 30-something minutes a few times in Miami and didn't really do anything with it. The difference, of course, is that when you're handicapping fantasy basketball, you're looking for 2 things to come together. Well, 3, really. We talked about this during the run-up to the season. It's kind of like, how do you handicap a card? Or how do you handicap an entire league? Thing 1, opportunity. Thing 2, usage. Thing 3, fantasy stat set. Now, if all 3 of those things come together, you get, top 50 kind of basketball player. If you can get 2 of those to come together, you typically have a guy you can start in most formats. And right now, that's what's different for Lowry. In Miami, he had minutes, but he didn't have usage or the stat set at that point because the usage kind of actually impacted the stat set, which maybe I should talk about a 4th thing. Stat set kind of ties into role on a team. So opportunity and role are not the same thing. So we're going to roll stat set and team role together. I used the word too many times in two different iterations of it. Lowry in Miami, his role was to stand there, shoot three-pointers, give the ball to guys that were younger and better offensively, and take charges on defense. Lowry's role in Philadelphia right now, with Maxey gone for we don't know how long. They called it a mild concussion, so hopefully he's back in a week. And Embiid gone for a while still, most likely. I would think at least another 3 weeks, maybe more. Lowry's role is suddenly be involved. You're the point guard, and you get to shoot. You get to orchestrate a little bit. You get to run some plays. You get to gamble on defense, go for some steals. So all of a sudden now we're going to get a little bit more, not all the way back to Toronto, but you're going to get a little bit more of the Toronto Lowry and a little bit less of the Miami version. Because look, he's also back with Nick Nurse, who he's going to give him a little bit more leeway because there's a trust built there. So you saw 4 3-pointers and 5 assists and a steal in his last couple of ball games, even with Maxey around, were pretty good. And so, yes, I can't believe that I'm saying this out loud for the second day in a row. Kyle Lowry is in all formats fill-in play right now. And I know what you're thinking. Toronto's schedule is not that great. You are correct. But if you pick him up tomorrow, then you at least get 2 games the rest of this week and 4 next week. And I think he still puts up probably usable numbers even when Maxey comes back. That won't be the case when Embiid is back around, but we got a little while there. If DeAnthony Melton happens to show back up again, that would also blow up the Kyle Lowry thing, but he's out indefinitely as well. Brooklyn. You lost Cam Johnson. Cam, you were finally playing well, and now he's out again. And I think it's fair that we can probably call Cam Johnson injury prone at this point because this is getting ridiculous. But again, one man, door closed and a window open again for the second time on the show. We'll go into that. With Cam Johnson down, Lonnie Walker got 30 minutes yesterday. Lonnie Walker is not a great 9-category fantasy player. He's mostly points and threes, a smattering of other stuff, but not much. As a very traditional, what we call a shooting guard fantasy game, which is points, threes, typically free throw percent is pretty good. Once in a blue moon, you'll happen upon a steal or an assist, but it's usually not enough without a lot of shots to translate into 9-category value. That said, Brooklyn is in a rare day off during their 5-7 game stretch that was hustling along here. They have 3 and 4 nights starting tomorrow, and I'm going to presume that Cam Johnson ain't coming back quickly because he very rarely ever does. So if you really wanted to grind out some points and threes and hope that Walker can catch lightning in a bottle, you could do that starting tomorrow on head-to-head. Roto, I don't think I'd do it. I just don't like his game that much. I actually like Lonnie Walker. I think he's fun to watch. I just don't like his fantasy game that much, I should say. So he's now a thing. Dennis Schroeder is very much a thing because usage just keeps getting heaped onto him. There was a few seasons back. I'm trying to remember what player we were talking about at the time, and I struggle to come up with the name. But we were talking about, I said that one player had a voodoo doll. Does any longtime listener remember when we used to talk about the voodoo doll? It was someone in Sacramento, I think, because every time one player came back, another player went down. And the guy who I said had the voodoo doll was just like knocking out one teammate perpetually so that he always had a starting job. Can't remember who it was. Well, Dennis Schroeder seems to have a Brooklyn voodoo doll because everybody's just dropping around him like flies out there. Like flies, I say. Ben Simmons, who you don't need a voodoo doll to knock him out. But Cam Thomas is down. Now Cam Johnson is down. Schroeder's got plenty to do. So he's in all formats go. Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith is in all formats go. Again, there's enough playing time and usage where he is going to get to do enough. It's a glorious thing when a team gets thinned out. It's unfortunate if you lose, if your player is the guy that goes down. But for everybody else, it's like, all right, sweet. We all get a dozen shots now. Delightful. Keep one eye on Dennis Smith Jr. as well. It doesn't seem like he's going to get enough playing time, but you never know. Here's the one we've been waiting for. New Orleans at Toronto. And you're like, Dan. This game is a 40-point blowout. Dan, why are you getting so excited about this one? Well, you know why. I can't contain my enthusiasm. I got to start on the Toronto side. We'll come back to New Orleans. Don't worry. There's one or two things to talk about on the Pelly side. Kelly Olynyk and Gary Trent Jr. I feel like I need to whisper his name because I'm so over the top excited. So here's the thing. And I said it in a tweet I sent out. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Because the Kelly Olynyk thing, for us, for me, whatever, like, if you want to call us a group effort here, has been kind of a running gag at this point. Everybody knows how much I love Kelly Olynyk. I always talk about him. Anytime he even has the slightest hint of a chance of putting up fantasy value, I'm in on Olynyk. In. Even to my own detriment. But it won us a bunch of leagues when he got traded to Houston a few years back. And it just might win us a couple of leagues now. We got lucky. I'll admit it. When he got traded to Toronto, I picked him up everywhere. And then when it looked like he was only going to get backup center minutes, I dropped him. Luckily, there were about 3 or 4 days in there, so he was able to clear waivers and nobody picked him up before Scotty Barnes went down. And then I added him again. And it still looked like he was going to play backup center minutes and almost nothing else. And then Jakob Poeltl dislocated a finger and had surgery on it and is out indefinitely. And if you want to talk about voodoo dolls, Team Canada, Kelly Olynyk, there's no stopping him now. There are no other centers on the roster. Jonte Porter, okay, like technically he plays center. There are no other centers on the roster. They basically have no choice. And I don't think that it's something they don't want either. They just signed him to an extension, 2-year deal. So they love him. But from just a, do we even have the personnel standpoint? No. Olynyk's going to have to play 28 or more minutes. And if this game's not a blowout, he probably plays 30 or more minutes. And Kelly Olynyk in 30 or more minutes in even a sub-feature role, which is basically what he is on this team now. He's arguably the best point guard on the team at the center spot. We are going to get some truly intense, well-rounded lines out of him yesterday. This game went about as poorly as any game could have gone for Toronto. Olynyk, by the way, was only a minus 14 in the minutes he was on the floor in a game they lost by 40. So I guess that's a positive. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, a 3-pointer, just for good measure, 4 out of 9 shooting, which, by the way, he's been at 50% shooting for a couple of years now, and 6 out of 7 at the free throw line. And for you 9 category friends, myself included, 1 turnover. I mean, this is the jackpot moment. Yes, we got very lucky that we were squatting on Kelly Olynyk and thinking, oh, maybe somebody gets out of the way. And then everybody got out of the way. Super lucky. Totally willing to admit that. But you know what? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. By the way, I also think Gary Trent belongs on rosters. He's getting enough shots, which is always the thing for him. Scotty Barnes being out is the big deal there. Just dropping enough usage to quickly. And Barrett, who's an absolute disaster, dumpster fire of a 9-cat guy. But, those 2 guys are the only other dudes on the team who are going to be willing to take shots. Not stop it. Jordan Nwora, 15 shots off the bench. You can keep one eye on him if you want, but he's not going to be a thing. But Gary Trent can be a thing. And we know from historically when he's taken shots, he's a 9-cat guy. Threes, steals, almost exclusively those 2 things, but generally enough of them. So yes, Gary Trent also. Let's slide back over here so everybody can see what we're working on. San Antonio lost at Houston. Wemby seemed to be hurt near halftime, but then this is kind of funny. The Spurs beat folks on Twitter were tweeting that not only did he come back out for the second half, but he sprinted back out for the second half just to make sure everybody knew I'm fine. So thank you, Wemby. That was good to see. A tidy little 7-block game for Wembanyama. This actually looked a lot more like his early season games. 6 turnovers, difficulty scoring. The Rockets were giving him kind of a hard time. And Alperen Şengün was just going right at him. Shout out to Şengün, by the way, for having zero fear in this ball game. And he's the reason that they toppled a Spurs team that had actually been playing a little bit better lately. You're not picking up Malachi Branham. You're not picking up Keldon Johnson. The Spurs are Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell. And that's kind of it these days, actually. Trey Jones has tapered off. I think you can stream Trey Jones's spot, which, honestly, sometimes it sort of feels good to be able to say, oh, yeah, you can stream a slot now that you couldn't before, because at this time of year, we want to have some sort of mobile slots to use on our rosters. Feels good to be able to move bodies around. I got an itchy fantasy trigger finger, though. Houston, we were watching to see if Amen Thompson could get enough playing time with Freddie VanVleet healthy, and it does seem like the answer to that question is likely no. I know Cam Whitmore had a nice ball game yesterday, but he had 4 or 5 bad ones in a row. So you can't just say, oh, when a good one pops up. You have to take the full breadth of it. And the breadth of it is that for the Rockets right now, it's Şengün, VanVleet, Jabari Smith Jr., who had a bad ball game here. Those are the guys that tend to sit inside the top 100, or certainly a lot better for the first 2 names I mentioned in 9-cat. Jalen Green, points league only. That's as far as you go. Indiana, team Jekyll and Hyde, blows out the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, didn't they just... I feel like Indiana just lost to a tanking team the other night. I've lost track of their schedule, but I feel fairly confident that the Pacers just lost to someone who doesn't belong. It was the Spurs. Yeah, we just talked about it. It was to the Spurs and Wemby. Anyway, as the Pacers go, I think Aaron Nesmith, he's probably playing through something right now, but you can also likely stream his roster spot. You're not picking up Ben Shepherd. You're not picking up Andrew Nembhard. TJ McConnell has actually been streamable lately in all formats, even with wildly fluctuating minutes. He's just been really, really good at assists and steals and field goal percent, and that's often enough as a combo. It's an extraordinarily dangerous stream to use against a games cap because a guy playing 18 to 22 minutes a game, the bottom can fall out fast. But he's on a heater right now, and you guys know I love TJ McConnell, so I give him the sort of wink, wink, nod, nod. Do it if you feel like it. Though, again, with the number of guys popping up right now that are set to play 30 minutes that didn't yesterday. Oh, hey, yeah, good point, chat room. I skipped the Pelicans. We'll come back to that one in just one sec. Sorry, guys. The Pacers, I think you keep it at Halliburton, Siakam, Miles Turner are the obvious ones, and then McConnell. Probably stat hunting a little bit. If you need assist, steals, and field goal percent, that's probably a safer way to put it. If you need everything, it'd be a little dangerous. Let's talk Mavs, and then we'll scroll back up to Pelicans. My bad, everybody. Daniel Gafford, 16 and 10 with a steal and 3 blocks. Derek Lively had some early foul issues. He also was just kind of bad. Maxi Kleba also had some foul issues, was also kind of bad. Of course, the problem here is that all 3 of those guys played 15 minutes or more. That's annoying. But this is what Gafford can do if you just give the poor guy 20 minutes. Daniel Gafford can get inside the top 100 in 20 minutes. In 28 minutes, as we saw earlier, that was 26 and a half minutes, he was top 35. We don't need 30 minutes. We need like 22. This is why it's so hard for me to drop Gafford. And I did admit I dropped him in one, not everywhere, a couple, like a half of the teams where I had him. Basically the head-to-head spots because you couldn't sit on a guy doing nothing. Roto, I just stick him on a bench. That's the easier call there. But, I mean, like, can we make the pivot here yet? Dallas is searching for defense right now. That was the talk during all of the post-game stuff. They are basically unable to guard anyone at the moment. And so if one of these guys can somehow separate themselves on that side of the floor, that's how they get there. I think you almost have no choice, at least on the Roto side, but to keep Gafford on your bench until the end of time, because it just, again, doesn't take that much to get him there. Head-to-head, I get it. Like, it's impossible. And then PJ Washington is on a heater these days. Guys go on hot runs. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's 2. Sometimes it's a month. Sometimes it's 1 game. I think Washington's heater is about 4 games now, if I'm remembering right. I'm sure we could look it up fast, but I don't really care to. He's a guy you can stream when he's hot, if you like. I continue to be very skeptical of ride the heater type of streams, but I get it. If you guys are, frankly, look, I play a relatively conservative style of fantasy basketball, but that doesn't mean that you have to also. If you guys want to take the plunge, see what happens, screw it, have at it. But, they say, well, what are you doing, Dan? I avoid situations like that for the most part because I feel pretty confident that I'm going to play them on the wrong day. That's the way it goes. For the Pelicans, Trey Murphy is on a heater for the ages. When it's funny for me to say I don't like playing guys that are on heaters, but you got no choice here. And the nice part about Murphy was this ends up being sort of like a streamer with benefits because McCollum went down. Murphy used that opportunity to get into the starting five, get his rhythm, and now he's carried it over into his bench role again. Play him until the wheels come off. How many threes does Murphy have over the last, 4 or 5 games now? I got to look this up. I should have had this ready to go, but screw it. You guys can wait 6 seconds while I look it up. He's gone completely buck wild. Trey Murphy has 24 3-pointers in his last 4 ball games. Woo! And that's with the twofer in there. At Indiana, this was a bad shooting game, although he had 7 assists that one. He's on an absolutely insane run over his last 4. You could even call it 5 ball games. And if you want to go back to the McCollum absence, he's been on a really strong run for about the last 2.5 weeks or so. And so, again, you just play him until it all comes apart. But he is volcanic level hot right now. Volcanic. 65% this last ball game with 10 3-pointers. 57% the previous day with 6. Previous game, rather. 2 games before that, 9 out of 14 shooting with 6 3-pointers. And by the way, when he can space the floor, the Pelicans are a pretty formidable team. And then when he cools off, it's kind of amazing, actually, how much the Pels rely on Trey Murphy to space the floor. And Herb Jones these days. Okay, so that was your Pelicans report, which is basically just keep playing guys until it doesn't work anymore. And then Phoenix and Denver, that was the last one, went into overtime. Grayson Allen finally bounced back. Oof, man, was he overdue. He had been on a really rough run for 2 weeks, but a great season for Allen overall. So you hold him as long as you possibly can, and this certainly evens things out. Royce O'Neal is also a hold in my eyes. I mean, 39 minutes in overtime, 34 in regulation is typically enough for him. O'Neal's a guy where you can get him to about 32 minutes. Then he's a startable fantasy guy. Usually gets a steal or a block mixed in there. Just kind of weird that he didn't in this ball game. But if you this is a game where if he shot 3 out of 9. If he shoots 4 for 9 and it's a 3-pointer, then you're like, oh, sweet ball game. The difference between feeling like you got a good game out of O'Neal here and you didn't was 1 3-pointer or probably 1 defensive stat. That to me is an easy hold call until Booker comes back. And you guys know I hate Eric Gordon's fantasy game. I hate it. I've said it 15 times this season and probably 100 in the existence of this show. And then with Denver, KCP back in there. He had a nice ball game. KCP, by the way, is very much a member of the Doesn't Matter Club. Sometimes he's okay. Sometimes he's not. At the end of it all, doesn't matter. I'm sure the Lakers are looking at this ball game and going, come on, Michael Porter, what gives? After a perfect 10 for 10 night, Porter goes 8 for 18. And Jokic was cold in this one too. I do wonder, and did Denver play somebody in between? No, they had 2 days off after that Laker game. This sort of felt a little bit like a letdown. They got the Lakers. Not that Phoenix isn't a team you get up for, but they got the Lakers and Boston on either side of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my rectum. Yep, got to say rectum on today's episode. And that's your program today, ladies and gentlemen. That's your recap. I have no idea how this happened, but we nailed some sort of Twitter thing today. And there's like 500 people watching live on social media, which is super rad. I hope you guys will like the tweet, again, that brought you to this. Please follow on Twitter at Dan Vespers. And if you have a moment, we do stuff on other things that doesn't go out on social media. So please check the show description somehow, or check, my pinned tweet or something like that. Whatever is the easiest way to do it. A link to our Sports Ethos Discord is in there. Links to our sponsors like manscaped.com. You can use promo code Ethos20 over there to get 20% off and free shipping on some amazing products at manscaped.com. But more than anything, I just want to make sure you guys come back. Please come back. That's the biggest thing here. Because that's how we grow this motorboat. We turn it into what's bigger, a motorboat or a schooner? I don't know anything about water. I don't know crap about aquatic stuff. The closest thing I've ever come to learning about maritime affairs is that I was an SAT tutor right after I graduated from college, and I tutored this girl who lived in Pacific Heights in San Francisco. And for those that haven't been there, it's expensive. And their house was a square. It almost looked like an apartment complex with an atrium in the middle. And if you went out, because they were on the top of Pacific Heights, so one side of their home faced the Golden Gate Bridge, faced north. In that room was just like maritime artifacts. And that's when I knew I was in an expensive home. It was just like, who has a room for a bleeping like boat steering wheel? Also in that room, a secret door. Pull out a book from the shelf and it swung open to reveal a wet bar. That's where they had all their liquor stored behind that wall. That was freaking sweet. I want to live in a house with a secret door. Make those big fantasy bucks, baby. Anyway, to everyone who's watching, I love you all. I appreciate you all. Please like, rate, subscribe, however you're taking in the podcast. It is very much appreciated. Quick check of the chat room here before we sign off for our morning show. I do think we'll probably hold off on the schedule streaming episode until the early afternoon Pacific time. We'll wait on some of the injury reports to come out. That's a good way to at least better know who we can drop into our lineup, because today is an 8-game day. There's a decent amount going on. I don't want to guess at who we can stream. I'd rather have a pretty good idea about it. But let's see what we got here. Do we think Kelly Olynyk has a better game versus the Suns, or should I lock in his performance last night? Oh, I didn't know that. It's a lock league. You know what? I'm going to say the Suns. I think he does better against the Suns because I think that game ends up more competitive. I think Phoenix has a little bit of a letdown. They got Denver, Toronto, and then they've got Boston. So Boston's dealing with all these teams at the same time. Toronto feels like the game where Phoenix kind of coasts a little, and that's going to allow a guy like Olynyk to chow down. I did get a shout out in the chat room for saying one in Hebrew. Do I think bench Poole is an actual improvement? Not only do I think it, but the numbers very much bear it out. He's actually, for the first time all year, actually been startable for more than a 2-game span. Since the All-Star break, Jordan Poole's top 70 in his bench role. Yeah, it's crazy. About 24 points a game, 3.5 3-pointers, field goal percent still at 43, but I mean, whatever. Like, he's actually finally doing some volume stuff. It's go time, man. Bench Poole is very much a go. All about it. Let's see here. Can you rate my team? Not live on a show. Sorry about that. You can maybe throw it in the YouTube comments section. I can try to take a look at it there. Can we roast Paul Reed on this ball game too? Yeah, he stunk. I think they're both schedule plays, those centers out there. Dan, my man. Hey, what up, Culls? I'm closing in on back-to-back regular season championships, playing the second place team up 2.5 games. Thank you once again. You are welcome, my dude. Old man squad forever. Would you drop Reed or Reith for Drummond? I would probably drop Reed. It seems like in points league, I think Reith probably does a little bit more here in the short term. Neither one of those guys is all that exciting to me. And then Chicago has a really good schedule here. But again, this question probably fits our later show a little bit more. Yeah, Manila says, come on into the Discord. We don't bite. That's a good way to call it. No biting in Discord. That's our rule for Sports Ethos. Again, that link is in the show description if you're watching on YouTube or listening after the fact on traditional pod channels. If you're over on Twitter, that link is in my pinned tweet for, I don't know, however long, which also, by the way, has links to all the different ways to get this show. So, again, huge shout out to, I have no idea where all of you came from over on the Twitter side, but it's super cool to have you here. I guess that's it. I was trying to keep this thing going as long as I could just to enjoy this crazy moment. Anthony Simons or Cade Cunningham? I'll go Cade on that one. All right, back in probably about 2.5 hours with our schedule show. We're going 2 first, baby. We'll do another one tomorrow and then just one show on Friday. That'll be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys over on social or Discord.